In the period between the years of 1961 to 1965, in a small isolated farming village high in the Cantabrian mountains of north-central Spain, a series of events occurred. Events which attracted widespread local attention. Attention which in turn resulted in the same events being observed and monitored by professionals from the fields of medicine, psychiatry, psychology, journalism, and the church. It is widely believed that from the evidence of those recorded observations that the events were of a supernatural nature. The village in question is the village of San Sebastian de Garabandal, a village of some 50 houses and 300 inhabitants, a village which nestles on a small fertile plateau, a plateau completely in the embrace of the surrounding mountains, a plateau that until very recently could only be approached by a rough mountain track. Village community remote and isolated from even its nearest neighbors. Now, almost 20 years after the cessation of the events, with over 200 books, national television coverage, and dedicated Garabandal centers all over the world publicizing and spreading the message of Garabandal, the events leading up to, during, and subsequent to the apparitions of Garabandal is now pretty well known. It is, therefore, not the intention of this short documentary film to reiterate what has been said so often and so eloquently, but to try to bring to those of you, those separated by too many earth miles and too many obstacles to make a physical visit to the village possible, the feel and the atmosphere of this rather special place. A village which for 5 years the Blessed Mother made her very own. A village that no matter where you go or where you tread in her footsteps. Garabandal is situated in the province of Santander, some 37 miles from the port of Santander, from which a daily ferry service runs to Plymouth, England. The journey takes 24 hours, and the cost varies with the season. An approximation of the cost is £20 per person and £40 per vehicle, one way only. If there are 4 passengers, the vehicle goes free. Garabandal is also approximately 156 miles from Bilbao's Sondica Airport. Limited stay London-Bilbao return airfare tickets are available for approximately £134. For an additional £3, the national autobus and trains provide a scheduled service from Bilbao to Cabezon de la Sal, from where a taxi can be hired for about £7.50 to cover the final 20 miles to the village. The only signpost in the whole of Spain which indicates the direction of Garabandal is located at the entrance to the village of Cosillo, which in itself is the entrance to Garabandal, which is some 3 miles further on and 1,000 feet higher. Approximately 2/3 of the way up the mountain from Cosillo, we round a bend in the road and obtain our first view of the 9 pines of Garabandal, the planting of which are credited to the grandfather of Conchita Gonzalez, the premier of the 5 visionaries of the pines. Today, they lend their peace and tranquility to the worldwide visitors who come here to pray and meditate in their shade, the same shade in which the Virgin spent so much time with the children of Garabandal. As one stands at the pines and looks down on the village hidden in the mountains, it's difficult not to look back in time and ruminate on the original founders of the village. That they were hardy, there can be no doubt. They were obviously devout Christians. The continuation of the centuries-old tradition of collective daily rosaries indicate this. I like to ponder on a discussion of a year ago when standing at the pines with a close friend who was a classical scholar in the field of early Christian history and an ex-curator of the British Museum, I posed the question, I wonder where they came from. Do you think they were probably nomadic? My friend said, very doubtful, I would say they were heathens. To which I replied, how can you say that when there is so much evidence that for centuries they have worshipped at the shrine of the Virgin? My friend replied, you make the common mistake of most people of misunderstanding the meaning of the word heathen. The heathens were people who refused to bow their heads or be subdued by the feudal baron system which prevailed in Spain, as it did in many other countries, including England, in the early medieval days. The crippling taxes, which was the cost of protection for residents in the secure community ruled by such feudal lords, forced the inhabitants to the edge of starvation. The heathens were people who refused to accept such subjugation and were banished from the compound to the heath and became known as heathmen. In those days, with the mountains being prolific with carnivorous animals, there are in fact still wild bear in the area surrounding the village of Garabandal, it took a great degree of physical and moral courage to court banishment. If in fact this is the origin of the people of Garabandal, and I like to think it is, then they are indeed a special people. The village today has changed little. The predominant sounds are still the sounds of the cowbells. The predominant smell is still that of the cow. There are not as yet any paved walkways, and the going is rather hard. And until mid-1981, there were no external village lights, so walking in the village after dark, pre-1981, carried certain difficulties and risk due to the uneven terrain. Quite a large number of the houses have been refurbished and are luxurious inside. About 50% are now owned by people who live outside the village, and there are quite a large number of absent foreign owners. And of course, there is a lot of land speculation. The center of village life, and certainly of the village of Garabandal, is the church. It is here that for generations the villagers have collected every night of the year to pray the rosary. The village priest has never lived in the village and visits only 3 times a week to offer mass. The church of Garabandal being only one of 5 such village churches that the priest services. Evening prayers, therefore, are not supervised and are the spontaneous reactions of the villagers themselves. There are people in the village today who in the past have placed their lives in jeopardy for the right to worship. Persecution of the people by the church, or the church by the people, is something that most of us accept as being from the far distant past. And heaven knows, Spain has had its fair share of religious persecution. But when, during the 1936-39 Spanish Civil War, 16 churches were seen to be burning in Barcelona all at the same time, and the leader of the anarchist, with his hand on the Holy Bible, said he would not rest until he had burned every church in Spain to the ground, does one begin to feel the intensity of the mood of the mob. Don Valentin, the village priest of Garabandal at that time, was threatened with death. The sacraments were taken from the church by the villagers and hidden in the house of Candida, which backs on to what was then the original house of the village schoolteacher. The sacraments were taken from one loft to the other, and it was in the house of the schoolteacher where the hosts for the Holy Communion were made. The refurbished house of the schoolteacher is now owned by Jaime and Deli de Bertrand, and this is as good a place as any to start our village walk around. Now sitting in the courtyard of the house and the home in Garabandal of the de Bertrand family. The lovely lady on my right is Adela de Bertrand. Her husband Jaime, who has virtually no vision, so is practically blind, live not in the village of Garabandal, but in the town of Gijón, which is in Asturias. And every time the English groups come to this wonderful village, they also come here to meet us. And they come here to help us and to open up the village for the visiting English pilgrims and the Scots and the Welsh in a way that no visiting pilgrimage could ever experience. The house in which the de Berton family lives, of which this is the courtyard leading into it, was at one time all part of a property known as the Palatio, no?
Yes.
As the palace of Garabandal. And part of that palace was the house of Candida, which you've already seen. And it was also in the house of the de Bertrans here, which was originally part of that palace, where the sacraments were also hidden during the persecution, the religious persecution of the church during the 1936-39 Civil War of Spain.
This mold was found in the house when we bought it. It was used by the priest here, who was the parish priest at the time, to make the hosts. There is the imprint of the hosts, and it was baked in a big chimney which was upstairs in a room. It took the whole wall, and also there was a little oven to bake bread. So this is a very ancient piece.
So that's marvellous. So this is actually the piece of equipment that made the communal breads for the Church of Garabandal.
Yes, that's
many years ago.
Many years ago, yes.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous, isn't it? And it's a part of the equipment of your house.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
We
great.
kept it as a...
Tell me, Daly, what else have you got in this house that is of antiquity in connection with?
Yes, when we bought this house, here, right here in this room, there was a very old table, and on top of them there were two pictures, very old. One was Saint Anthony, and the other was the Immaculate Heart of Mary. I said to the lady that I would like to keep these pictures, so she gave them to me, and we found out the picture of Saint Anthony is about 100 years old, of the year 1886. It's imprinted in the back, and now I have them in my home in Gijón.
Marvellous, that's 120 years old virtually. And St. Anthony, the finder of lost things.
Yes.
Yes. Among other things, Delhi has in her possession some wonderful tapes that were made of the visionaries of the children Conchita, Jacinta, Marilole and Marie Cruz in the 1960s, and the tapes are a true recording of conversations which the children held with the Blessed Mother.
And the rosary.
And in the discussions with the Blessed Mother, there are also instructions given by the Virgin to the children on how to say the rosary. Now, Delhi has those tapes in her possession. She keeps them here. And when pilgrims come to the village of Garabandal, she's always made herself available to let them listen to those tapes. Jaime, you've told us how and when you bought the house in Garabandal. You haven't told us why you come to buy a house in this village. Can you, in fact, tell us this? St. Michael.
Well, could be St. Michael had something to do with it. Of course, Our Lady is the first. Our Lady kept like calling me here. I don't know why. It's something I cannot explain. This village has an attraction since the very first time I came here in 1964. That was in August. I first came here. I saw no ecstasy at all, but I spoke with the children, and they gave me a very good impression. They were very simple and very authentic for me. And then I came back on the 18th of June 1965. That was when St. Michael delivered the last message of Our Lady. Well, this village was packed with people, full, about 3,000 or 4,000 people. And we went to the sunken lane, the Calleja, and Conchita had her ecstasy there. I was very much impressed when I didn't see her in ecstasy, but I don't know what it was. I felt something supernatural, the silence there, and well, I think I felt the presence of Saint Michael. I wasn't very much devoted to him, and since then, well, he's my real friend. He gives me many favors. Well, I also want to add that Saint Michael has kissed 3 scapulars of 3 brothers of Saint John of God, the 6th of August, 1962. Yes, that was the only kiss Saint Michael gave ever here in Garabandal. They have made little relic medals with them, and one of the brothers lives in Gijón, where we live, and he has given out his scapular to be cut for this purpose of the medals. So these medals, I think, are doing also a lot of good to the world from Saint Michael. Okay.
Well, it was here on June the 18th, 1961, that the story of Garabandal really began. The 4 little girls, Conchita, Jacinta, Mari Loli, and Mari Cruz, were scrumping apples in the orchard to the left of the wall. As they climbed over the wall, which was then of course much lower, and started to play in the sunken lane, the Archangel, St. Michael, appeared to them. This is the house of Jaime and Pilar Garcia Durante. They are a family with 11 children. Their house stands on the exact spot where the orchard at which the children were scrumping apples in 1961 originally stood. The piece of tree that we have here is all that remains of the apple tree, and the family are always very kind to pilgrims. They never refuse to let them see this relic of the tree, which they keep inside their house since it was broken by enthusiastic pilgrims some 4 or 5 years ago. 6 years ago, when the tree in fact was still intact and partially growing, that wandering pilgrims stripped off some bark from the tree as a souvenir. As they took the bark off, it exposed a very clear picture of the Virgin. The picture is formed in part by the various wormholes in the timber. This is the house of the brother and sister-in-law of Conchita Gonzalez, the premier visionary of Garabandal. The house has 7 letting rooms and is possibly the only true commercial house in the whole of Garabandal at this particular time. From the point of view of the pilgrims who come to this village, this is probably the #1 house. Here on the porch of Serafin's house we're accompanied by his wife, Paquita Gonzalez, his mother, Anaceta Gonzalez, and these 2 lovely-looking young ladies on the left are the daughters of Serafin and Paquita, and they are also the nieces of Conchita the Visionary. As we leave the house of the Garcia Durante family, we navigate the Calleja, a rough, undulating rocky road leading to the pines. The going is difficult and slow. It was here that the children were seen to come down backwards at high speed during the ecstasies. The stations of the cross, situated on the rough rocky climb, are to many pilgrims symbolic of Calvary. The glass-cased statue of the Virgin identifies the position of her appearance to the children. Today, the tranquility of the pines is the location of group prayers and mass offerings. Over the years, well-meaning but misguided pilgrims have desecrated the trees to such an extent that they are now in danger of complete deterioration. Kind sponsors, however, have endeavored to prolong their lives by providing funds for the construction of plinths around the base of each tree, so protecting the surface roots which have been badly damaged by votive candles. To the right of the main tree there is a further statue of the Virgin identifying the position where she appeared to Father Louis André, the Jesuit priest and 5th visionary of Garabandal. As we enter the village of Garabandal, we are aware of the new constructions blending with the old. This rather magnificent edifice is the new house of Sari Gonzalez. Sari is the sister of Mari Loli. In stark contrast, we come to the house where Mari Cruz was born and lived, and where her mother still lives. In the early days of the village's founding, this particular building was the original church or chapel. The lady on the left is Maria Gonzalez, the mother of Jacinta Gonzalez, the second visionary. Maria is the lady who carries out the wonderful old tradition of calling all villagers to stop what they are doing and to say prayers for the souls of the departed. And this is done by Maria walking around the village ringing a handbell. It is said that when Maria dies, this particular tradition will end after many centuries. Maria, in fact, died in August 1984. The importance of this particular house today is that Julia, the mother of Mari Loli, who lives here, is the guardian of the National Garabandal Centre's house in this village. The house in which she lives is the original general store which was run by the father of Mari Loli, whose name was also Serafin. So at the time of the apparitions, this house was very much at the center of the happenings. This is the house of Mary and Michael. It was acquired with the kind help of benefactors in January 1980 and is owned and maintained and operated by the National Garabandal Centre of Great Britain. The house is dedicated to the memory of Amelia Norman, founder and benefactor of the National Garabandal Centre, Great Britain. The house adjacent to the house of Mary and Michael is the house of Olivia. It has the only telephone in the village and is in fact a public telephone for public use. The telephone number is 42728029. Round the corner and directly behind the house of Mary and Michael is what was until quite recently the village post office of Garabandal. These four ladies are, from the left, Maximina, the aunt of Conchita Gonzalez, and also the leader of the Daily Rosary, Amelia, a local housewife, and in the corner, Elena, who was until recently the village postmistress. She now lives in this house, which until last year was the post office. Adjacent to her is Amablia, who is the sister of Leandro Cosillo, from whom we purchased the house of Mary and Michael. The first lady on the left, sitting on the bench, is Regina Gonzalez, wife of Jose Gonzalez, the newly appointed alcalde or mayor of Garabandal. In the middle is Maria Gonzalez, her sister and mother of Jacinta. She, as we already know, is the lady who calls the villagers to pray for the souls of the departed on a daily basis. We then come to Maria Remedio. Maria is the first cousin of Jacinta Gonzalez, the second visionary of Garabandal. She owns the house directly opposite where she is now sitting. It's a large house, and she is at the time of filming unmarried. And she tells me that she is looking for a husband. Moving around the corner from Maria Gonzalez's house, we pass the house of Jose Gonzalez, the alcalde, and proceed to the village's one and only bar and store. The bar leaves much to be desired, but the store, however, as small as it is, sells just about everything, from cheese to shoes. One of the major pastimes in the village is bowls. Provincial and national tournaments are very enthusiastically entered into. And the house of Maximina is directly in front of the bowling area. Adjacent to the house of Maximina is the small and comparatively untouched house where Conchita Gonzalez, the visionary, was born and lived during the time of the apparitions. Her mother, Anestheta, who we've already seen, and met still lives here. Directly in front of Conchita's birthplace is a continuous running mountain water outlet known as Conchita's Fountain. The continuous water supply to the village was obviously a major factor in the foundation of the village in the first place. And in Garabandal, the mountain spring supplies the communal washing area and never stops flowing. And even today, with pipe water to the houses, the women in the village still collect to wash and gossip at the tank. Continuous overflow from the wash tank did, until 1980, flow downhill, past the schoolhouse and the church as an open stream. A stream over which a small plank bridge on which the school children played featured in one of the ecstatic events. The house we are now looking at, which is directly below the wash house, which is situated at the top end of the hill, is the house of Pepe Diaz. Pepe, as mayor of Garabandal for many years, has been a leading and respected figure in the village community for a very long time. His testimony of his experiences during the apparitions are very much valued.
El día del milagro de la comunión, el milagruco que decía Conchita, ese día I was glad she did so, because I was wanting very much to see this miracle that was announced, and I had seen it, I had seen the ecstasies many other times, but on this occasion I was, the whole day I was waiting for the miracle to come and around the girl, as I had been asked. He says after waiting for the whole day, at the time of the miracle, the girl left the house in ecstasy and went around the corner of the house, and there she fell to her knees, and he saw how she took out her tongue, and it was completely clean. There was nothing on the tongue. And then he saw how the host appeared, a completely white, normal host. At that moment, he did not receive he was not very impressed when he saw the host. But once the miracle had taken place, he was, after 2.5 hours, he went back home and he began to realize the importance of this miracle. The question I asked about the impression, he says that he was very calm, but other people around him were well shouting and miracle, and they were very much impressed. After, when he was back home, he really got very much impressed. He was, he got like something emotional. Goes back now to the miracle in itself. The host was normal when it came to the girl's tongue, but as she had it, it was about 2 or 3 minutes on her tongue. Then this transformed into something, it grew bigger, and then it had light, very much light around, and also he says he cannot explain it very well, because this is the real miracle, he thinks, that it was something alive. In the middle of the host, he felt like something was alive, and it was very brilliant, like golden, he says. And that was something he cannot explain it, how it was, really. After the girl, Conchita, swallowed the host, she went over to the church and she prayed something, said some prayers in the church. Then she went to the calleja, on the spot of the first apparition of Our Lady, where Our Lady had appeared. Then she went around the village, and at last she went back to her house, and the ecstasy finished in the same room where she had begun. And after this, all the people went to her and told her that they had seen the miracle of the Holy Host. They had seen the host in her mouth, and they talked about all these things.
Pero exactamente no lo sé. Sí calculo como unas 1500.
Pepe is telling me that he estimates that he has seen around 1,500 apparitions.
Había muchos días de 5 y 6. Una hora primero, otra más tarde, luego lo de una, luego lo de otra. Bueno, cuento, no por día, sino porque en el mismo día veía a una niña sola, veía a 3 juntas, veía luego más tarde otra sola. Sí, calculo todo esto. ¿Sí?
He doesn't calculate by the days, but because there were 5 or 6 apparitions daily in the beginning. So he saw one girl, and maybe after a time he saw the 3 girls, and another time 2 girls.
Sí, sí. Y luego pues seguir todo lo que pude.
Yes, he followed the apparitions all he could. Aunque estaba muy cansado a veces, ¿no?
Sí. Parece que hoy lo tomamos como en una risa, en un sueño, pero entonces había que
hacer penitencia. Sí. Now he says we do it like if it was like a dream we had or something, no? But the thing was really real serious, very serious at the time. And I'm telling him that they had to do penance, ¿verdad? Penitencia.
The building on the left, which we are now looking at, which is directly adjacent to the house of Pepe Diaz, was until 1980 the schoolhouse for the village of Garabandal. Today, however, the children no longer study here, but go down the hill to a school which services 5 or 6 outlying villages. The little low-story building directly in front of the church is the original schoolhouse of the village. It dates back many centuries, and I have not been able to find out when it ceased to exist as a school. It would seem that the existing village church of Garabandal has been in use for some 500 years or more. Until 4 years ago, however, it was a very dilapidated and broken down church, until it was refurbished inside and outside by Pepe Diaz and his son. The church of Garabandal is serviced by one priest only. There are just 3 masses a week. The priest is Don Juan. He lives in the village of Carmona, and he comes up to the village of Garabandal on Fridays, Sundays, and Tuesdays. The Mass on weekdays is offered at 9 a.m. The Mass on Sundays is always at 1 p.m. Don Juan, incidentally, is a Garabandal boy. He was born in this village, although he no longer lives here. As I've said, he lives in the village of Carmona, which is approximately 12 kilometers away from here, and my understanding is that he was one of the 2 original priests that were on the commission for the investigation of the happenings of Garabandal in 1965. Following our circuitous route round the village, we now come to the house of Clara and Milagro, 2 sisters. Clara, like most of the ladies we have met so far, is a widow. In fact, the ratio of widow to widower in the village of Garabandal is very high. It seems odd, because by and large, the women, with exceptions of course, seem to work so much harder than the men. We have seen the house in which the mother of Jacinta lives. We have also seen the house in which Jacinta was born. We now look at the house in which Jacinta and her husband live when they are in the village. We have already mentioned the centuries-old tradition of daily rosaries and prayers for the departed souls. Another rather lovely tradition is the continuous sharing of the Virgin by the houses of the village. This statue is said by the village elders to be 300 years old, and it moves around the village from house to house, staying under each roof for 3 nights at a time. It has done this consistently throughout its entire life. When we took possession of the house of Mary and Michael on behalf of the London Garabandal Centre, the villagers insisted that the statue came to us from our very first day. This, we were told, would provide the house at all times with the Virgin's protection. All produce that is consumed in the village of Garabandal is brought up from the valley below. Some comes from Puentenanza, which is where the bread is baked. Some comes from Curcio, but most of it comes from Torrelavega and the fishing village of San Vicente de Barquera. The fish vans come up twice a week. Bread comes up daily. Vegetables come up 2 or 3 times a week. We have already said that outwardly the village has changed very little over the years. With regard to the everyday lives of the villagers, however, it has changed hardly at all. They still work their farms entirely by hand, and sometimes this can be back-breaking work. The cows, and there are several dozen of them in the village, are also milked by hand. I personally am consistently amazed by the number of people who seem to think that Spain is a mountainous, barren country. Mountainous, yes. Barren, certainly not. The rainfall in this part of the peninsula is quite high, and this coupled with the sun creates the Costa Verde, the green coast. And at certain times of the year, it takes on a tropical look. The village cemetery of Garabandal is quite small. It holds barely 100 below-surface graves. For the past 25 years, the people that have died in this village have been entombed in these wall tombs. And among the most recent is the entombment of Simon Gonzalez, who died in February 1980, and he was in fact the father of Jacinta, the second visionary. Also in the same wall tomb is the entombment of Jose Antonio Diaz, who was the son of the alcalde, of the mayor of this village. And he died in 1976 at the age of 17. And he, in fact, was the very first person that was baptized by the present village priest, Don Juan, when he became a new priest. No visit to the village of Garabandal can possibly be complete without meeting and talking with Don Valentin Marichal, the pastor and the father confessor to the villagers before, during and after the apparitions. Don Valentin now lives in and is the pastor of the village of Curcio. We are now sitting with Father Don Valentin Marichal, who is the parish priest of Curcio at this present time. He's kindly consented to let us interview him on behalf of the pilgrims of the United Kingdom. This is the question.
Yes.
Father, have you always lived and ministered as a priest in the province of Santander?
Siempre ha administrado usted su sacerdocio aquí en Santander, en la zona esta de Santander?
Sí, en Santander, sí. En Santander siempre.
Always yes, in Santander.
When did you first come to Curcio as a priest?
¿Cuándo vino usted a Cosillo por primera vez como sacerdote?
En el año 45.
In 1945.
1945. And you were also at that time the parish priest of the village of Garabandal?
¿Y en aquel tiempo era también usted párroco del pueblo de Garabandal?
20 años. Tenía nombramiento de Cosillo y Garabandal, las dos parroquias juntas.
Yes, I was in charge of the parish of Cosillo and Garabandal, both of them together.
Father Don Valentin, he I think was the first person ever to question the children at the time of the apparitions. Did he believe what they had to say at that time?
Dice que que usted fue en realidad el primero que preguntó a las niñas cuando al principio vieron el ángel. What was the question? Was this?
He was the first person.
Yes, he was the first question. Fue usted el primero que les preguntó.
Sí, primero.
What
Yes.
were his first feelings when children said they had seen an angel?
¿Usted qué sintió o qué pensó cuando le dijeron las niñas que habían visto un ángel al principio?
Pues yo al principio me preocupé mucho, porque la cosa me parecía seria. Y entonces fui al obispo a decirle lo que pasaba. Y
Sí.
yo,
At first, he was very worried because he thought that it was something serious, and he went to the bishop to tell him. Sí, sí. Fue al obispo.
But afterwards, having experienced, or as an observer, some of the children in ecstasies, he came to believe in what
More.
the children were saying was true.
Usted, después de ver entonces los éxtasis, creyó que era verdad cuando empezó a ver los éxtasis. ¿Creyó usted? en su
no, al
interior?
principio no lo creía. Al principio vi que era una cosa extraña, muy rara, pero no creía que era lo que iba a ser.
Yes, at first he did not believe. Well, he saw that it was very strange things were happening, but at first he did not really believe it was true.
So there was a time when he doubted.
At the beginning,
Yes.
he was not sure.
And how many ecstasies approximately did Father witness?
¿Cuántos éxtasis cree usted que ha presenciado?
Pues más de 500 o 600.
Around 500 or 600.
500 or 600.
Yes.
And it was during that period that he lost all doubts.
Entonces fue durante ese periodo de que usted estuvo viendo los éxtasis que ya no tuvo ninguna duda.
Todavía la duda me seguía hasta... al final ya no, al final de las veces ya creía claro que era sobrenatural.
Yes.
Al final.
It was only until the end of the apparitions that he had not really any doubt anymore. But during the apparitions, during the time, all this time he was looking at them, he had always doubts. Only at the end he was really convinced.
Completely sure.
Yes.
Is there any special little story concerning any of the apparitions that the Father can tell us about? The story that is most special to him?
Dice que si hay alguna pequeña historia que puede usted contarnos, que sea para usted que la haya impresionado más de las apariciones.
Pues yo una vez estaba muy cansado y quise a ver si la Virgen, digo, me marché a la cama diciendo, a ver la Virgen si aclara esto, porque esto lo veo yo ya muy cansado.
Yes.
Y
Once he was in bed and he was very tired already and said, well, let's see if the Virgin will fix this up because this is getting very complicated and we are all very tired.
y en aquel tiempo solían salir las niñas con un crucifijo a dar a besar a los enfermos y a gente que venía de fuera.
Yes, at that time the girls used to go to the houses where the sick people were to give them the crucifix to be kissed, and also to the visitors that came in.
Y entonces aquella noche, estando yo fui a la 1 a dormir, ya eso de las 3 o 4 de la mañana, apareció Mariloli en éxtasis y fue a mi habitación.
Yes. That day I had gone to bed very late at 1 o'clock, and Mariloli appeared at 3 or 4 in the morning at his bedside.
Iba con un grupo, entre ellas iba Mercedes Alisar, un grupo de 7 o 8 personas.
See, she came with a group of about 7 or 8 persons, and there was Mercedes Alisax was with them too.
Y la niña llamó a mi puerta. Había 4 habitaciones seguidas. Yo estaba en la tercera.
Yes, the girl knocked at my door. There were 3 or 4 doors together, side by side, and she knocked at mine.
Llamó a mi puerta, yo abrí y entró muy sonriente, me dio a besar el crucifijo y se marchó.
Yes, and she just came in very smiling very much, and he went to him and gave him the crucifix to be kissed.
Y hay que aclarar una cosa, que yo cuando me había cambiado de casa hacía 2 días y la niña le pregunté, ¿cómo fuiste a mi habitación? Pues no sé, ahí me iba a ir a ver, yo creía que usted seguía viviendo en la otra casa.
Hacía 2 días que
Había cambiado de habitación.
pero en Garabandal, ¿no?
En Garabandal, sí.
Sí. Así que usted solía ir a otra casa.
Yo dormía en otra casa.
Yes, he wants to make clear that while he was staying in Garabandal, he always stayed in another house, and he had changed to this room about 2 days before. And then he asked Mariloli, why did you come to this house? He said, she said, well, I don't know. Our Lady brought me here. I thought you were still in the other one. Yes.
Eso fue la mejor prueba, una de las mayores pruebas que yo he tenido.
Yes, this is one of the most great proofs that he has had.
This is marvelous. It's a lovely story.
Es estupenda, sí, desde luego.
Hay otra prueba que cuando me quitaron de aquí de la parroquia para ir a otro pueblo, pues
He has still another proof that when they took him away from this parish to go to another parish,
me mandó un papel Ceferino, el padre de Mariloli, escrito a lápiz en papel de estraza, diciéndome, dicen las niñas que ahora en cosa de un mes no se vuelve más la Virgen.
before leaving, Seferino, Mariloli's father, sent him a short note written in pencil saying that the girls said that in 1 month the Virgin will not appear now.
Entonces eso me preocupé un poco porque ya no sabían que yo marchaba al otro día.
See, he was a little worried about this because the girls did not know that next day he was leaving the village.
Y entonces digo, si la Virgen no vuelve a aparecer más, me van a culpar a mí de todas esas cosas.
Yes, and then he said, well, if the Virgin will not appear, they will put the blame on me about all these things.
Entonces yo tenía amistad con Martín Artajo, y Martín Artajo me dijo muchas veces que si me pasaba algo sobre Garabandal, que fuera de él.
Yes, there was a man named, he was a minister, era, no? A prime minister, Martín Artajo. He was very friendly with him and told him that if something happened to him, he could go to him.
Fui allá a Madrid, estuve con él y me atendió muy bien, y fui a su casa a cenar y me quedé en su casa.
Yes, he went to Madrid and he stayed in his house, and he was very, very good to him.
Y después me dice que tenemos que ir a ver al nuncio.
And now he told him that they should go to see the nuncio apostólico.
Y yo le dije, yo al nuncio no me parece bien ir yo porque voy entonces como a defenderme de una cosa que yo no tengo culpa ninguna.
Yes, he said, well, I don't know if to go to him because it is like I am defending myself of something I have not done.
Y entonces a él le pareció muy bien eso y dice, bueno, pues déjeme a mí y ya esté aquí un día más o lo que quiera, y fue él.
Yes, and then he says, okay, leave it all to me and you stay 1 or 2 days here and I will fix it.
Y entonces estuvo con el nuncio mandó una orden al obispo de Santander que el cura que había traído aquí que se bajara y yo volviera allá, a Garabandal.
Yes, and then he went to the nuncio and spoke to him, and then the nuncio sent a message or a note to the bishop of Santander to say that the parish priest that was in Garabandal to send him back, and the priest that they had sent to send him back to where he was.
So, in fact, at that point in time, they were going to send Don Valentin back to Garabandal?
No, yes, of course,
Yes.
but because of this prime minister,
Yes,
he interfered and he in his favor.
yes.
So they sent him back. Así que le mandaron a usted de vuelta.
Sí. Y después cuando llegué, el día exacto que la niña había dicho que la Virgen aparecería a aquella fecha, apareció la otra vez, después de venir yo.
And then after he came back to the village, exactly the time that the girls had said that the Virgin would appear again,
Yes.
she did. She did appear.
That's
And he was
lovely.
already here back.
And he was back in the village
Yes.
then.
Yes.
So
Eso fue estupendo.
In the final part, then, when did Father actually leave the village as the pastor there, finally?
Quiere saber que finalmente cuándo fue que usted dejó de ser párroco de Garabandal.
No recuerdo bien, pero estaría allí, no recuerdo. Ahora ya como...
Después de las apariciones.
Sí, después de las apariciones.
Yes, after the apparitions he's thinking about it.
A los 10 años de las apariciones, de terminar las apariciones, a los 10 años ya me quitaron.
Como el año 75 o así.
Por ahí, sí.
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 Sí, around
No.
1975, he says. About 10 years after the apparitions were
He
over.
was still the priest of
Sí,
Garabandal.
sí. Usted todavía siguió siendo el
Sí,
párroco de,
sí, sí,
de
párroco de
Garabandal.
Garabandal, sí.
Como 10 años después del año 65,
sí,
de acabarse las
Se
apariciones.
acaba de aparecer, sí.
Sí. Yes, 10 years after the apparitions, around 10 years.
So there was only one period of time then, after the apparition started, that the Father was not in Garabandal as its priest. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And that was that short period of, what,
Un mes,
Estuvo fuera
un mes, sí, un mes.
Only 1 month. The exact time the girl said that
That
the Virgin would not appear.
would not
Not appear in 1 month.
in 1 month.
Yes.
So right from the very beginning of the apparitions, right through to the end of the apparitions, and into 1975, other
Yes.
than for that 1 month, Don Valentin was the parish priest of Garabandal.
Sí, o sea que durante todas las apariciones, y después de 10 años de las apariciones,
Sí, sí.
excepto ese mes,
Sí.
fue usted párroco de San Sebastián de
Sí.
Garabandal.
Sí,
Muy
sí.
bien.
And all this time he's had this wonderful faith in the belief of the
Sí,
apparitions.
y todo este tiempo ha tenido usted esta maravillosa fe en la realidad de las apariciones.
A ver, ¿cómo?
Todo este tiempo, el tiempo que usted
Sí.
ha sido párroco,
From the end of the apparitions.
que ha tenido usted esta maravillosa fe de que las apariciones son verdaderas.
Sí, sí.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to say to Father, thank you very much. So there it is, a beautiful little village of San Sebastian de Garabandal, where the Blessed Mother has made a promise of a miracle to come here at the Pines for the benefit of all mankind.